All right. Today was meant to be a bit of a showdown live, as you would normally get. Today we were going to use Lurantis and Rhydon on a team, and we wanted to try out a Stellar Tera on Lurantis to see if it could pull off a similar role to Enamorus and to Superior in the OU tier, right? It makes sense. They're all contrary Pokemon, and you want to spam Stellar Tera because you, instead of getting the attack and special attack drops on Terra Blast, now you get a boost instead. Really fun. And you get a one-time boost on all of your other attacking moves as well. And while Lurantis doesn't suffer from the same problem as Superior, where it doesn't get much coverage, Lurantis also can take advantage of that one-time attack boost on all of its moves. Very cool. So unfortunately, Lurantis isn't that good, and we sort of see that in the video that I had made. But after I went and made the video, and I actually smashed in that video, we got all wins. It was great, but I realized after I had finished the recording that I didn't record my audio. And so one of the options we could have gone with was for me to just dub over the games and pretend like I had done it live, but that never works. You can also post commentate, but I'm not very good at that, and I don't really like post com as much as I like live commentary. So I thought instead I would take this opportunity to talk about the Stellar Tera in general and how it can be used on these contrary Pokemon, and if there are any other Pokemon that I think that it's worth using it on. And while that's going, you will see the battles in the background that we're going to be shown in today's live. All right, so the Stellar Tera is a boost to all of your moves, but it's a one-time boost. So what does this mean? Normally when I Terastallize into a type, I get a stab boost on that move. So if I am Charizard and I am a fire and flying type, if I Terastallize into a ground type, then I will now get a stab boost on the ground typing as well as on my fire and my flying. So I get 3 stabs, very useful. And it also changes my typing to ground. I no longer have the fire or flying typings. If I decide to Terastallize into a typing that I already have, then I will get a 2-time stab boost on the typing that I chose. And any other typings that I may have will still only be a 1.5 times boost. With the Stellar Tera, you don't actually change your typing. Your typing is still what it is. And this is something that sort of annoys me about the Stellar Tera conceptually, because it looks like you've changed your typing, but in reality, you have not changed your typing at all. It is still exactly what you were. Now, the Stellar Tera gives you a 1-times boost on each of the typing of the moves you have. So again, if I'm Charizard, and my particular set in this particular live was Flamethrower, Hurricane, and I had Scorching Sands on there as well. And those are my only offensive moves on my Charizard. So I have a fire move, a flying move, and a ground move. Now, I'm already a fire type, and I'm already a flying type, so those moves are already going to get a 1.5 times boost because they are stab, the same type attack bonus. And they will get an additional boost on top of that, and the boost is similar to what I would get if I were Terastallized into that type. So my fire moves are now going to get a 2 times boost, my flying move is now going to get a 2 times boost, and the ground move, because I'm not a ground type, will get a 1.5 times boost. So that's only for the first time that I use it. After that, the fire move will go back to being 1.5, the flying move the same, and the ground move won't get any boost at all. So once I've exhausted that resource, the Stellar Tera doesn't actually aid me in any way. Now, Terra Blast is another move that complicates Terastallization. Of course, Terra can be used defensively, but it can also be used in conjunction with Terra Blast to give you coverage. Terra Blast on a Stellar Tera Pokemon is interesting because the Stellar Tera type is not one of the conventional 18 Tera types. It does give you unresistible damage, which is really valuable. So if I have a Ghost type come out on a normal type, I can still hit you with my Stellar Tera Blast. But The problem is that in order to nerf this unresisted damage, Game Freak made it so that it would drop your attack and special attack by 1 stage each time. So it's not something that you can spam. Additionally, you only get a boost on the Stellar Tera Blast 1 time as well. You will get a 1.5 times boost on that, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but as I understand it, from what I see in game, when your attack is boosted, your Pokemon makes a cry and sparks come out of their hat. And the same happens on Tera Blast, if I'm not mistaken, the first time, but not on subsequent times. And after that, you will just get a normal 80 base power damage. I believe it's 80 base power. It might actually be 100 base power. So I'd have to double check on that. But the point is that it's dropping your attack and special attack. And that means it's not very useful for Pokemon outside of contrary Pokemon. And that's why contrary Pokemon want to use Tera Blast, because it allows them to get a boost instead of a drop while still doing unresistible damage, which is very valuable for something like Superior. Superior doesn't have any coverage outside of Dragon Pulse, which is not coverage, if we're being honest. Maybe right now it's not that bad in OU because there's so many dragons running around, but really, as soon as Heatran comes out, you can be sad. So you want to have Tera Blast as unresistible damage. Very useful. Enamorus wants it just because it wants the Calm Mind boost, but it can't get it when it's Contrary. And Contrary is a pretty decent ability to have on your Enamorus overall. So you might as well, you know? And it is also unresistible damage. So maybe you don't want to have to run Mystical Fire and Earth Power and whatever else. So you just want that. That's fine. And like I said before, you will still get that additional boost to each of your moves. If I were Terra Fairy Enamorus, I would get a 2 times boost on my Moonblast, and I could use that to get an Oko on a, I don't know, Tinglu. I don't know if Oko is Tinglu, but maybe that gives me enough power to burst past Tinglu. But if I had gone into this battle with Tera Blast, a Terra type of ground, then I wouldn't be able to do that. So having the Stellar Tera type does give you a different option to have a boost to those different move types. So it's not valueless outside of just the boost that it gives you to your attack when you go for it. But most Pokemon, I don't think, are going to want to run it outside of Contrary and Terapagos, which has special properties and doesn't even technically have Tera Blast because it has Terra Starstorm instead. So let's look at the other Contrary Pokemon and see if they can act like Enamorus or like Superior. Well, in today's live, we used Lurantis, and Lurantis is another grass type, monograss, just like Superior. There's a huge difference, and actually there's a couple differences. The first difference is that Superior is fast, and Lurantis is slow. Lurantis being slow is a huge detriment to its viability as a Stellar Tera type user, because if I am slow, I'm almost certainly going to have to take a hit. The only way that's not going to happen is if my opponent laid down Sticky Web against me, and now I get a speed boost and now I get to outspeed you. But almost certainly, Lurantis is going to get outsped by most Pokemon, and when it does, it's going to have to take a hit. Now, if I'm facing off against a Muck or something like that, I could have gone for Terra Poison as a defensive Terra type, and then I would have resisted Drain Punch, I would have resisted Poison Jab or Gunk Shot, and all they can do is knock off now. And Muck, of course, is just a big problem for Lurantis, generally the PU tier, which is why I mention it. If I'm a Stellar Tera type, however, I remain a Grass type, and so it can still go for a Gunk Shot and just obliterate me. Of course, maybe you should just argue that I'm not supposed to stay in on Muck, but then I must ask, what am I supposed to stay in on? Because every single Pokemon that can hit me well is going to stay in on me, and isn't going to fear the Stellar Tera. They would only fear a defensive Tera. Maybe I'm a Terra Water Lurantis, and I can get out of a bad matchup against an Ice Pokemon like Articuno, and then suddenly flip that matchup on its head, and now I'm hitting it with superpowers, and it's taking more damage as a result every turn, and it can't really get out of a bad situation, so now it's forced to U-turn. Something like that. You want to be able to defensively Tera as a slow Pokemon. And so I don't think the Lurantis really has the desire to run Stellar Tera. The second difference between Serperior and Lurantis is that Lurantis isn't wanting for coverage. Now, as I said before, Enamorus is also not wanting for coverage, and Enamorus can still find value in the Stellar Tera because it's able to get 1.5 times boost on non-stab, 2 times boost on stab for the 1 time, and that can be very valuable. And you could argue the Lurantis would want that as well. I can get a 1.5 times boost on my Leech Life, I can get a 1.5 times boost on my Superpower, and that's great. I don't even need to run Terra Blast if I don't want to. I can run any number of other moves because really I'm just boosting with Superpower or I'm boosting with Leaf Blade. But overall, I don't think that the benefits of that 1 times boost outweighs the fact that I don't get a defensive profile, and I didn't need the Terra Blast, like I said before. I'm not like, oh, I need coverage moves, man. I can't hit these Pokemon. Maybe it'll be useful for Muck, but again, the Muck is beating you before you're beating it. So really, not a great option for the Stellar Tera type. A Pokemon that's stuck in OU right now is Malamar. Malamar is contrary. I don't think the Malamar is that slow, but it's not that fast. For the PU tier, maybe NU if it ends up there, it's pretty slow. It's not even base 80. So all the base 80s are going to be outspeeding you, and there's a lot of those around that speed tier. You'll be good enough to outspeed most defensive Pokemon, and you can get some cheeky EV spread that gives you a bit of speed, but not a lot. Get some bulk in there, and you can make it work. But I don't like the fact that I can go into Choice Scarf or Choice Banded Pissimian, U-turn on you. Knockoff, you're not going to resist that. So many moves hit Psychic Dart for super effective or neutral damage, and Malamar's not that bulky. So I think Malamar would prefer to be a fighting Tera type, right? I'm 4 times weak to Bug. Well, now I resist Bug. That's very useful. And I get Stab on my Superpower. And you become a fighting type, you have Superpower, Knockoff, Rest, Sleep Talk. That's all you need. I think that is a much more valuable set than what you would get with a Stellar Tera type. So once again, not a Pokemon that needs or wants it. So now the only other Pokemon that's on this list at all that, you know, besides the babies, would be Servine. And Servine is base 83 speed. It beats that base 80 speed tier. It's still getting outsped by a lot of Pokemon. It's not going to be hitting even the base 85. But, you know, it's still baiting a lot more Pokemon than it would be otherwise. And the main thing is that Servine needs coverage. Again, like Serperior, it doesn't have coverage, and that's the thing that's going to stop it from getting a sweep. So if it can get the coverage with Stellar Tera, that's the big difference maker. So I think that Servine and Serperior both make good candidates for Stellar Tera. Personally, I'm not even convinced that Enamorus and OU is going to always run Stellar Tera. I think that's the flavor of the week. I think that people are going to move on from it. I think there are better defensive Teras that it can run, like Terra Ground, that are going to give it an extra stab boost on its Earth power, while allowing it to be immune to electric moves and to block Volt Switch specifically, which is the most valuable one, I think. Or even to help it beat the new Raikou form, right, with Thunderclap. Well, now I can be immune to Thunderclap, I can kill you with Moonblast. That's value added that you can't get with Stellar Tera. So I don't think Stellar Tera is necessarily the end-all be-all on Enamorus. It is very fun though, and I don't think it's a bad option. I only think Stellar Tera is going to be seen on Serperior. Now, could Stellar Tera be seen on other Pokemon outside of Contrary? I don't think the answer to that is no. I think that we could see certain Pokemon that are fast, that will outspeed their opponent and not need to defensively Tera, but that want that extra breaking power. Those are the Pokemon that should be looking into a Stellar Tera. For example, if I am a Dragon Dance Dragonite, I've got the multi-scale, I can take one hit. After that, I can get my extreme speeds going, I can get my earthquakes or my fire punches or my outrages or whatever it is I want going. I will be outspeeding just about everything, but I just need that little extra oomph, right? And I don't want to be locked into being a normal type necessarily, because it would be nice if I could hit other moves for a lot of power as well. And what we turn Stellar into there is basically a gem situation. And I think that's the other situation where we will see Stellar Tera used. The big caveat there is that as opposed to a gem, which is a one-time boost to a move on a Pokemon as a held item, and the opportunity cost there is your held item. In this case, the opportunity cost is the whole entire Tera slot. And not only have I changed my Tera into something that is unable to be defensively usable, but if I decide to use this Stellar Tera, then none of my other Pokemon can use that. Whereas I could have 6 Pokemon with 6 gems, and my one Pokemon using a gem doesn't impact any of the other Pokemon's ability to use their gems. And so Stellar Tera would really have to be justified as to what KOs are you picking up and how is that going to impact the gameplay. If there was a Pokemon that was really strong, that was struggling to pick up one shot kill, but they were able to get it if they had just that little extra oomph, I could see it. Another example is Blaziken, right? Blaziken, +2 attack with a Sword Stance. It's going to be doing lots of damage to a Pokemon, but maybe it's doing 89%, and it really just needs that extra bit of power. Well, now I can whip out the Stellar Tera, I can get a close combat kill, I can get a Flare Blitz kill, I can get an Earthquake kill, that sort of thing. I think that could be useful. If you're Greninja and you need to get into your Ash Greninja form, maybe that's a little extra oomph you need, but you don't know what type you're going to need it in. Maybe you want to have the extra boost to your Dark Pulse, but then the Water Shuriken's the thing that needs to get boosted, and the Stellar Tera could be for you as well. But it's got to be on a fast Pokemon. That's the #1 most important thing, because all slow Pokemon want a defensive Tera profile. Now, going into this DLC, we were thinking maybe the Stellar Tera, and we didn't know what it was called at the time, it would be a pure neutral typing. And that could have been interesting in terms of defensive Pokemon. But as we see now, it is not that at all, and it doesn't actually affect your typing at all. So I don't think the Stellar Tera type is good on a slow Pokemon at all. But at the moment, we don't really have any good candidates outside of Contrary Pokemon for Stellar Tera. I don't think Stellar Tera is broken. My recommendation for OU, which, you know, nobody should be listening to, is that if Superior, for example, ever got so broken and annoying in the tier, I don't think it's Stellar Tera that's going to do it, and we should ban Superior before we ban the Stellar Tera, because it's only on Superior that's broken. It's not broken on Malamar, and it's probably not even going to be broken on an Amorous. And I don't think most Pokemon should be using the Stellar Tera. So save your Tera Shards. Maybe in the future there'll be some other use for it, but at the moment I really don't think you should be Stellar Teraing any Pokemon except for Superior, which you definitely should be. That's my 2 cents. Hopefully you enjoyed my ramblings while watching me beat my opponents in the background, and that'll be it for me today. I'll catch you guys next time.